Hello, and welcome back to another encouraging, inspiring, and including episode of the Achieving Unity Leadership System weekly podcast, where we help turn chaos into connection and purpose into action. I am your host, Mark Intrican, founder of the Achieving Unity Leadership System, also known as the Unity Leadership System, that is available at www.achievingunity.leadershipsystem.com, which is dedicated to the leadership system by improving lives through encouraging, inspiring, and including others. I am honored today to introduce another truly remarkable guest, Rosemary Olender. Today, Rosemary is an educator, author, speaker, and consultant who has spent years helping families, educators, and communities build confidence, connection, and resilience through everyday moments that truly matter. Her work is grounded, practical, and deeply human, speaking to people who want to grow without feeling overwhelmed or judged. As we begin, I invite you to listen with curiosity and kindness. You may hear ideas that connect with your own life, your family, your journey, and your work with others. This is a conversation meant to spark reflection, encourage questions, and offer support you can carry forward in a simple, meaningful way. First, before we delve into this insightful discussion, let me briefly introduce my company, Reality Focused Dynamics, where it all began. Achieving Unity Leadership System podcast is relatively new. Many of you have saw it before as Achieving Unity Success Formula. Well, the success formula is still the heart of the process. It's more than just a formula. It is a system. It has real conversations for leaders that are navigating division, frustration, and change, including your family, your community, and everywhere you go. We appreciate you being here, and let us know. Give us feedback on this new layout, our new slides, and where we're going. Next slide, please. Leadership sometimes today, doesn't it feel just a little bit harder than it should? When we look at leadership, it seems like it should be a little bit easier. But today, disconnection seems to be growing. We're losing some of the connection that we've had in the past. The frustration that we have today is truly draining on us, the people, the teams that we work with, the teams at the office, the teams at work, the teams we goof off with, the teams we play with. So much frustration, so much issue. The good intentions that we have and the things that we've been taught, our culture, are colliding with what is real world pressure. So that's what we teach and what we share. Unity is not just a soft skill. Unity is a leadership strategy that we must focus on. We must be focused every day going forward. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by achieving unity? What we mean by achieving unity is encouraging progress without enabling dysfunction. We've heard about dysfunctional families, dysfunctional offices, dysfunctional workplaces. Why don't we put that back into a functional process? Achieving unity, communication and collaboration are key to everything that we do. Get the negativity out of it. Let's quit finding wrong and finding problems. Let's look at the value ahead of us. We need to be inspiring action without forcing agreement. We're nodding our heads when, no, we don't agree. Sometimes when people are talking and they say that word right, and then keep talking, they say, well, that's right? And keep on talking. They don't pause. It's time for us to make the pause, to stop things, start not agreeing without knowing more, including the voices, while maintaining accountability. Sometimes it's the voices in our head saying, I don't think that's what I'm believing. I don't think that's right. I think we need to speak up in a positive way, including others. inspiring others, and encouraging others. We need to work together to be building better businesses, better lives, and a better world, one conversation at a time. Again, thank you. I am your host. I am Mark Intrican, founder of Reality Focused Dynamics and the Achieving Unity Leadership System. These are processes that we can use every day in everything that we do going forward. I work with leaders, teams, and families navigating conflict, change, and complexity, helping us move forward with clarity, unity, and sustainable action. As part of my work, I also help people access the legal shield protection. In moments like these, clarity and unity sometimes also require legal guidance, identity protection, somebody you can talk to without spending thousands and thousands of dollars. That's one of the things that I work with in my process. That's what I want to be, is get focused on how we can protect ourselves as we continue building unity. As I talk about focused, let's go to the next slide and break it down just a little bit more. Focused. This is my trademark. Focused. Focused. Facilitate on clear, unified, sustainable execution and delivery. That's where it is. Facilitate. Tough conversations that build trust. Not rude, not anger, no hate, no prejudice, but there's still tough conversations that bring out the truth and build the trust with each one of us. On common ground and shared purpose. That's where we must be. Common ground. We hear all the time about everybody should know that. Well, everybody doesn't. It's not common sense if everyone doesn't know. We must be clear in our communication and our agreements. That's the C. Clear on communications and agreements. We must be unified. Yes, unified actions across our differences. Everyone's not going to agree on everything. We know that. I know I like the Broncos and the Saints. Some other people like other football teams. That's okay. Between the whistles before the play starts and then when the play ends, okay, yes, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on that football field, but we don't have to take it home. We don't have to take it in our heart, and the players don't have to take it with them. They can leave it on the field once that whistle blows. We also have to be sustainable, build results that last. We have the ability to be unified in the things that we do without creating arguments. We must build results and then execution, and that is so important. You see it there in bold. Consistent, responsible action. That's it. It's not something just by the wayside. This is a system that we're working on. Consistent, responsible action, which brings us to delivery. Inspired growth and lasting change. Change is short term, improvement is long term, and that's where we go with our delivery to take it to wherever we're going in our life and the lives around us. Next slide, please. Oh, and don't forget, I forgot to put that up at the bottom of the screen. 303 Focused. That's my phone number. That's the office number. That's in the center of our logo. Focused. Focused. It's what we are focused about. And again, you can call me anytime. 303-362-8733. And if you forget the number, go to your keypad. 303 FOCUSED. You got it. Let's get focused. Thank you. What can you expect? That's what we need to work on. What do we expect in everything that we do? Number one, real world insights and skills rooted in the focused approach. Being focused. We have compelling stories of people who have achieved unity in leadership. Where you work, your employment, your family, it's all there. It's about stories that we have achieving unity with each other. Practical strategies for clearer, more effective execution and delivery. Don't forget that delivery. Don't forget those actions. It's us taking those steps one direction forward, focused. Conversations, they need to be engaging, supportive, and deliver actionable value. Don't forget that word value. We talk about certain processes such as anger. Where's the value? We want to make sure there's value in what we do and we deliver those actionable values. All centered, all of this, all centered on helping each of us build stronger, more cohesive teams. That's the direction we're going. And that's what we can do today. Here's the invitation. If unity matters to you, the Achieving Unity Leadership Systems supports all leaders through coaching and advisory engagements. Contact us. We want to help grow forward. Courses, the courses and facilitated workshops. You can put the course on, do it online, do workshops online or at your office, wherever you are, make it work, make it happen. We have keynote speeches for all leadership conferences, for all hands meetings. These keynote speeches will bring the key to open the doors that have been locked for so long. Achieving unity is the path to stronger relationships, inspired leaderships, and again, lasting change. Doesn't that seem like what we would all want? That's where we need to be, and that's where we want to be focused growing forward. What can you do? Contact us. It's easy. Let's promote clear, unified, sustainable action starting now. Starting today. Don't put it off till tomorrow. Let's do it today. Reach out to explore coaching, courses, and workshops or speaking engagements to promote unity and leadership everywhere. Achieving unity is the path to stronger relationship, inspired leadership, and lasting change. Get in touch with us. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Upcoming conversation. We have a great conversation today, a great podcast interview. But starting next week, we'll have Tanya Lehman. She'll be here, empowering people to speak up. As we talked about earlier, let's don't be quiet. Let's don't let things go. Let's speak up. And that's what Tanya will be here to talk to us about. The week after that, Todd Levinson will be here, creating deeper social connection. People we work with, people we do things with, home, work, family, community. It's all about creating that deeper connection. That's what Todd will be here to talk to us about. On February 11th, Alex Shahid and Andy Intrican, my cousin, will be here talking about leadership, protection, and trust. Let's get together. Come back. Put this on your calendar. We'd love to see you here every week. But today's guest, I am so thrilled that she's here today. It's amazing how parallel that Rosemary and I are in what we do and how we take things forward. It's a beautiful process of how we can grow with others. She's an educator, consultant, speaker, and nonfiction author. She dedicates her time to strengthening connection, confidence, and resilience. And I love that word resilience and how she works with it in families and communities, drawing on decades of professional experience and real-world insight. Rosemary helps parents, educators, and mentors understand how values, communication, and everyday moments shape our confidence, shape us emotionally, and help us raise healthy children. Her work offers practical, compassionate guidance that empowers people to navigate challenge with clarity and purpose. That's what we all need. And that's what we wanted as a child, even though sometimes we think it's discipline, it's actually learning. So by the end of today's podcast, Rosemary will also share a special gift with listeners to support them in applying these ideas right away. And actually, if you don't mind, I will share that with you right now. and give you the QR code to get there. So once we go to the next slide, here's the two QR codes right now. The QR code on the left is how to connect with Rosemary. She's available anytime. Pull out your phone, use that QR code, get in connection with her, talk to her, set up some time with her. On the right, you'll see the other QR code. That's access to Rosemary's free gift. She has a questionnaire for you that will help you in learning what she does. But there's only so much I can tell you. Let's get Rosemary on here and let her tell you more about what she does. And let's get some questions going. And I know some of you will be online today, so maybe listening to this later. Get in touch with her when you can. But for now, let's go to Rosemary. Rosemary, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you? It's good to be here.
I'm doing, oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. It's exciting to have you just to be able to talk about the things that you do and where you're going and what you've done. It seems like there's such a beautiful story behind how your book, Your Coffee and Wisdom, A Father's Legacy to Living a Rich Life, came to life over cups of coffee with your father. Could we start by hearing what inspired this journey from an
Sure,
educator to an author?
sure. Um, many 30 years ago, 34 years ago in 1991, my father was in the hospital and we knew he wasn't going to be with us much longer. So I had a conversation with him, which actually ended up being my last conversation with him the night before he passed away. I was sitting at his bedside and he took the time to say to me, I need to apologize to you and your sister. And I was rendered speechless, and I'm not usually speechless, but it took me a few seconds. And then I said to him, Dad, I know you're sick, and I know that you know how sick you are, but are you also crazy? Do you not understand that Tony, my sister, and I feel like two of the richest people in the world, and it's all because of what you have given us? And he said, I don't understand. I'm leaving you with a house that doesn't have very much marketable value, with a car that's a used car, and nothing in the bank to speak of. And I sat back and I said, Dad, those are not the gifts that you gave us that made us the successful individuals we are, and two individuals who feel like we were blessed the day we were born to you and mom and won the lottery that day. And he said, I don't understand. So I said, well, let me explain. So for the next 40 minutes, in my head, I started thinking about him as a parent and as a early teacher of mine, and said, okay, let's talk about the gifts you gave us. And out of that conversation, I spent the next 20 years while I was still working, sort of jotting down reflections and memories and ideas about, okay, let me shore up why I thought of these gifts. Why were they so critical to my growth and my ability? And people have always complimented me from when I was in grade school that I was self-confident. Some teachers thought I was a little too aggressive with my opinions, because if I saw something that needed to be done or I cared about somebody, I intervened. So over the years, I jotted down these ideas, but I was still working. And then from 2003, when I formally retired, until COVID, I did a lot of educational and family consulting around the state of New York. And I didn't have the time to write that book, but I did write a book that was critical to my work life, and that was my first book called The School Home Connection: Forging Positive Relationships with Parents. Again, the parental family kid connection to what my work was
Right.
all about in education. So the book didn't get written then. Well, COVID comes along, and I said, okay, it's time to put this pen to paper and write this tribute to my father. So it was meant to be a small memoir that was a tribute to this man who raised me in such a wonderful environment with my mom. And out of that came essentially, I selected 12 gifts that I thought non material gifts that were critical to making me a rich individual in life. And those were things like time and presence, love and acceptance, patience, humor, empathy, ethics, integrity, um, sacrifice, things like that. So I set the book up so that each chapter is one gift described. And the gift, the power of that gift is explained in the first one or two paragraphs. And then I list my reflections, some stories, and some examples of how my father gave that gift to us, whether it was by modeling it or talking about it or showing it. And then the third section are a bunch of tools or suggestions that parents and educators and anyone who's mentoring a child, social workers, nurses, um, things that they can do to give these gifts to the children in front of them. I'm sure a lot of them are things parents already do and care providers already do. But the people who have read the book have said, it just tweaked kind of my thinking about stuff, or it gave me some extensions of what I do with my kids. I had one friend tell me, thank me. He said, thank you for letting me know what I've done correctly as a parent, but also giving me suggestions on how I can do things better. So that's how the book is set up. And there's one section of don'ts. Don't do these things because they destroy the relationship. And so that's kind of how the book came out. Now, the reason the book is called Coffee and Wisdom is because from the time I was a elementary school student, that's as far back as I can remember, my father would come and get me and say, Ro, come in the kitchen, we've got some cookies, have a glass of milk, let's talk. And that was in the evening
Wow.
every night. Every night he would do that. That became our ritual. My mom was pretty taken up, her time was taken up with caretaking my grandparents who lived underneath us. And that was the time of night that she would go down and make sure they ate well, they had their meds and all of that kind of thing. So my dad and I had
Right.
this time and he captured it. When I got to be 12, I insisted on coffee. So from 12 on, I've been a coffee drinker. And we would sit over coffee and talk. And my father was an incredible communicator, self-taught. He was a man who did not graduate from high school. I've had a lot of parents say to me, well, I'm not smart enough. It has nothing to do with being smart. It has to do with being observant. It has to do with paying attention to life and seeing what seems to work and what seems to cause problems. My dad was a master at that. But he also would not let me get away with just answering the question like most kids do. How was school today? Fine. That wasn't good enough for my father. He would sit there and he would say, why was it just fine? Why wasn't it a good day? What stopped it from being a good day? Or if I said, oh, I had a great day, tell me what happened. And he would ask follow-up questions. He was the kind of communicator that would treat a conversation the way you would peel an onion. You would ask a question and then take a layer off and go down a little bit deeper into the discussion and take that off and then go down a little bit deeper. So his questions all involved the who, what, where, when, and why of what was going on. So I was trained very early to be a critical
That's
thinker.
awesome.
And critical thinking is something that is so valuable for us as individuals and the kind of thing you were talking about earlier. If we want to sit and listen to each other and try to understand each other and solve some differences of opinions, we need to be able to critically think. We need to be able to say, well, where's my bias in this? And my father would say that. Do you think you were biased? And when I was little, I'd say, what does that mean? And he'd say, well, did you go in with an idea in your head that you can't shake, and that you, even no matter what information you get. So I was learning to be a critical thinker. And he would share his day and do the same thing. And he would say to me, well, what do you want to ask me about that? So that he would make me think about, okay, let's have a full conversation about this. So
How
that's why,
interesting.
yeah, so that's why it's called Coffee and Wisdom, because we did that. That night that I had the conversation with him, which was the last conversation I ever had with my dad, he said to me before he told me he was apologizing, go get a cup of coffee, let's talk. Even when he was ill, he would call me long distance because I lived about an hour away at that point. I was married, and we would talk, and he would tell me what the doctor said to him and what he was dealing with, and we would share our feelings, and he would always ask me about my day. So I would say that one of the most important gifts my father gave me was his time, and consequently, ironically, families today are overwhelmed with so many demands for more of their time, demands for their money, their information, their resources, heck, demands for everything. And the reality is that, they need to relax a little. And I tell parents, parenting is a journey, it's not a
It
destination,
is.
you know? So, like any trip you take, there's going to be good things and there's going to be not so good things. There're going to be some roadblocks you can't get around. There will be roadblocks that you'll find your way around and be excited and maybe find something better on the end of that detour. So I think if parents can just relax a little bit, because they don't need their wallets. And we live in a hustle culture. And a lot of
It
parents,
is.
particularly parents who don't feel they have enough time, think they can make it up to their kids by giving them gifts, giving them the newest
Mm.
iPhone, giving them a car when they get their driver's license, and going, giving them riding lessons and, art lessons. And not that they shouldn't do that, but
Right.
in place of their
Not as an
presence,
escape.
ENCE, which is so critical. So my dad gave me all that. And that's why you have the cover of the book, which is basically some cookies and a cup of coffee. And that was our reflection time. Originally, I was going to call the book Conversations Over Coffee because my father instilled a lot of his wisdom in those conversations. But that wasn't the only place. He also instilled conversations in his active listening that he always engaged in. I look at intentional parenting as like a stool with three prongs to sit on. The first one is to listen actively to your kids from when they're little. You could be sitting there reading a book, but you should be listening to what they're saying, what they're doing. You need to understand each of your child's likes, dislikes, fears, concerns, hopes, aspirations as they get old, as they get older, even when they're little. I want to be a fireman, daddy. Listen to that because it's telling you something about the child. And no two children are alike. So you have to listen to each of them and try to sort out, okay. And it sounds mind-boggling, but it really isn't. It really isn't. You can sit there and just say, oh, I didn't, that's interesting, and have a conversation later. Listening actively also means when your child is talking to you, you're not looking at your phone. You're not reading a book. You're not saying, oh, nice. You're making eye contact with them. And if they're little, you're on the floor with them. When I was a school principal, I went from high school, junior high to elementary, which almost killed me because I spent the first month on the, different body positions, sitting on the floor a lot with the kids. And boy, I had to go to chiropractors. My back was killing me because I wasn't going to just stand there
Wow.
and look over kids. So, um, eye contact is critical, listening,
Yes.
reflecting back what you hear, and
I
not
like
in
that
a,
right there, the reflecting back. And I think you mentioned that who, what, when, where, why, and how earlier. And
yeah,
asking those questions, right? As they're
right.
talking,
And then
as you're
listening for
listening.
the answer, not telling them what they should be saying, but really listening and then following them up with, well, that's very interesting. And not correcting them, but just reflecting back what you hear. um, because being totally judgmental is tough. My father was not a very judgmental person at all. And he would listen very actively. And he had my sister and I grew up 13 and a half years apart. I actually started college the day she started kindergarten. So we grew up in two different houses, and people have said, was your father the same with her? He was. He did the same thing. She had coffee with him. They talked a lot of sports because she loved sports. I didn't. I would talk a little bit about football with him. She talked a lot about baseball with him and football with him, and politics. And I talked politics. My dad was really into talking about politics, but she did have essentially the same dad, even though it was years later. Now, the second thing parents need to do, the second pillar, is to be very observant and really watch your kids and pay attention again to what are they drawn to, what are they afraid of, what do they seem to react harshly to. I have families I've worked with as a director of special ed and a special educator who started to pay attention to their kids and understand that you didn't have to be on the autism spectrum to have a problem tolerating sound. And they started to pick up on, oh, our daughter really is not good when it's really noisy in the house. Have you noticed? To just pay attention to that because they are so very differently. And if you don't observe your kids and find out where they're struggling, and you don't listen to them when they come to you, even when a child comes to you and says, mommy, look at this picture I just drew. Isn't it pretty? And you need to say, yeah, why did you choose that color? Or that's great. Because if you don't do that, when they're 13, 14, and 15, and their boyfriends are doing drugs or their friends are having sex, and they want to talk to you, they're not going to come to you. They'll go to the people they
Right.
feel confident enough that will listen to them. So you
And
want to
sometimes that listening is not necessarily the people that are bringing the best value to them, too, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And the whole point is you want your core values, whatever they are in your family, what your core values are, to be passed on to your kids. So observing and listening. The third rung is the hardest one, I think, as a parent, because we're human and we make mistakes, but it's to model carefully what you want your kids to see and be like. If you're modeling aggressive, harsh, angry language to people in front of them and on the phone, they're going to think that's okay. I can do that. I'll be that. But
It's
if
a
you're
comfort level,
modeling,
right?
right, if you're modeling, yeah, because then it becomes the norm. Oh, it's normal to raise my voice. We're Italian, we raise our voices. Maybe that's not, and I'm Italian, so I can say that. And we do raise our voices and we get very visual. And there are kids who can't handle all of this movement of hands and stuff. Um, so we have to be careful because the kids are watching and they're watching when they're little. The term out of the mouth of babes didn't come from nowhere. It was from children really paying attention. And you're their focal point when they're little, and you're their focal point when they get older, and they're comparing you with everybody, every other adult they see, and your aunts and uncles or whoever's in the family. So those three pillars of intentional parenting will go a long, long way towards instilling in your kids. Um, it's a base point for you to instill in your kids the values and the character you want them to become. So I
Right.
would say to parents, that's the starting point. And then once you do that, make sure that you give them the gifts I talk about and why each of them is a powerhouse in its own, and why it really pushes kids to be rich, rich to me is I got a lot of acronyms built around that, but basically resilient and independent and confident and happy.
I like that. And Rosemary, what some of the things that you're talking about is knowledge, because money is great, but the more knowledge you have, is it going to be easier for all of us? especially raising our children, the more intelligent they are, the easier it is for them to make a
Right.
better income. Right.
And we're talking about emotional intelligence here because there are a lot of incredibly intelligent people who have
True.
very high IQs who are not terribly connected to many people and are not terribly happy um, because they've got wealth. And see, part of this came out of two things. I grew up with a family that placed high value on character building. They really did. And we didn't have a lot of money. So we didn't have the resources to sort of distract us from that focus. Okay. So it was important for me to pay attention to that. I was in school, I was in a small town. The town was kind of dichotomous. We had a lake and we had the city. And the kids who grew up along the lake, like so many communities, had very large houses, had very brand new, expensive cars. Their parents owned a lot of the big businesses in the city. And then we had the lake crowd, I mean, the city crowd, which I was part of, that was basically middle class, lower middle class, laborers, workers, small business owners like my dad, who owned a muffler business and a gas station business over the years. And what I started to see is that my friends who were in my classes from the lake that had a lot of money were no happier than my friends who were from the city that didn't have very much of anything. There wasn't a big difference. And as I grew older, I paid attention to that in my career, working with families and working with especially working with a lot of distressed families because of, kids with disabilities, kids with behavior problems, um, significant money issues, and feeling less than because they couldn't provide for their kids. I wish I had a dime for every parent who said to me, well, I can't give my kids what they need because we don't have enough money. And I said, oh, but everything your kids need, you can put your wallet away. And they would like, what do you mean? And I would talk to them and I would get to know their kids sometimes. And I would say, here's what your kid needs. I can tell you as his principal or as his teacher. I can tell you this is what your child needs. So it's important to kind of give these non-material gifts that establish within your own sphere, your own family, what your core values are. And resilience is key to everybody's happiness, especially in today's
And
world.
and it sounds like the information that you're talking about is investing into their tomorrow. What you're
Correct.
teaching them and those
Correct.
answers that they're building from is going to strengthen their tomorrow. They'll have that more solid foundation to walk on,
Correct.
right?
Right. And what I try to tell parents is the legacy you need to leave them is not about money. It's about leaving a legacy of character that is going to serve them well the rest of their lives. They can blow through money in a month, if they're not intuitive enough to understand what they need to do with it. But they can't blow through a lifetime of being taught how to be trusting, how to be patient, how to be respectful, you know? So the greatest inheritance you can give your children is who they become. When people see your kids, a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, it's their kids." Well, what do they tell? What do pet owners learn? That when their dog is misbehaving and their dog isn't doing things, it's really what do the trainers do? They train the owners. They train the owners what to do. And it's the same thing. And I'm not saying you can't have a kid that gets in with the wrong crowd and just totally dismisses you because that happens. But the reality is if you use what I'm talking about, I know how it worked for me, and I saw how it worked for my friends who became engaged with my dad. In the 1980s, there was a research study done on resiliency. And the researchers took, and I forget whether it was Ohio University or Harvard, it was one of the big colleges. They took It was a decade-long study. They took 100 adults who had, quote unquote, made it. Now, what does that mean? Their definition of having made it was they didn't end up in jail, they didn't end up on drugs, they were able to get a job, hold a job, be independent, take care of themselves and maybe a family. Some of them went to college, some of them became janitors. It didn't matter. They were independent, happy, successful individuals. Yet, all 100 of them had come from terrible childhoods and situations, drug abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, um, you know, uh, starvation, not having had their basic biological needs met, medical problems, all of that. Yet they made it, and others who are in that strand did not. So they said, well, let's do a root cause analysis. Let's figure out what is the basic reason why each of these individuals made it, and is there any strand or commonality across the group? And they interviewed every single one of them at length. And they found that in all 100 cases, each person, when asked, how did you make it out of that crap environment you lived in? How did you make it out of that trauma? How did you surpass that? Every single one of them said, well, I had someone who let me know that I was a good person, that I could make my life into whatever I wanted it to be. I could do what I wanted to do. Every one of them had at least one significant adult who convinced them that their past was their past and they didn't have to become their past. They could supersede it. The
And that's so
interesting,
true. And it's very interesting. And as you said, that it convinced them. Sometimes that convincing is very minor. Convincing
right,
doesn't mean that you're spending hours and days and weeks convincing them. It's just giving them that value where they see
correct,
the value in doing that
correct,
or continuing
absolutely,
that to go forward, right?
right,
It and what I'm hearing you say, it appears, and one of the things I like about what you're saying is that honesty and humor, patience, and gratitude are the pillars to your approach. That's strength, and how each of these have specific, again, as I mentioned, values proven them to themselves that they're the most powerful thing in shaping a
right.
strong, kind, and confident. We don't want to say just child, but a person,
Even adults. And the
even
interesting thing about
adults.
this, the interesting thing about the study is of the 100 who all had mentors or a mentor, 87 of them reported that it was a teacher. So I tell my teachers, and I've continued to tell my teachers, you have incredible influence and power over every child you teach. You have the power to make them or break them. So be responsible, take that responsibility to heart, and be very careful to always give a child hope and look for how you can instill some future in them that makes them believe they can do something more than what they're doing.
And I like what you're saying because you mentioned to make or break, but each of these situations is not because of forcefulness. This is because of that sharing that I'm hearing you talk about. They're
Absolutely.
giving them the chance to speak up. Then you have that, as you mentioned, that active listening,
Mhm.
sometimes even questioning why they feel that way, good or bad. You might want to
Right. No
say, want
judgment
to make
on
a
it.
lot.
Just why do you feel that way? And how could we look at this differently? My dad, one of the chapters is on perspective. And my father, it's on perspective and empathy, actually. And we certainly need a whole lot more of that in the world today.
Yes.
because people are being so judgmental and so divisive and so we, they, and non-inclusive. My whole career has been including people into processes, environments where they're not wanted. Disabled kids. Disabled kids were never invited into schools. They had to have separate classrooms. They had to have separate wings of a school. So my whole career was inclusion, getting these kids in. Um, so my father would talk about, you know, how did I learn from him? Like I said, I learned from him by our conversations. I learned from him by his modeling of things and by his reflecting back. We would watch television and he would say, that was an interesting show. We might be watching Bringing Up Father or something. And he'd say, why do you think his son said that to him? How do you think he felt when when his kids said that to him? And we would talk about it. So my father would talk about perspective and he would say, Rosemary, we can say we can walk in other people's shoes. You need to walk in other people's shoes. And he said, and for the most part, we can sympathize with them and get an idea, even if you and I had had the same surgery. Oh yeah, I know what you're going. No, you don't know what it's a different journey. It's not exactly the same. So he would say, the problem is we don't know what the baggage is that came with them to this point. And if we did, it might drastically alter our perspective and our empathy towards how they are behaving or what they're doing. And I'll give you an example. I came home from school one day in high school, very distressed because my high school chemistry teacher walked into, and we didn't, I don't know whether it was a subject, it was chemistry. I wasn't a math science person, but he rubbed me the wrong way. He was little. We used to say he had Napoleon complex, because he was gruff and all business like. Well, he walked in the classroom one day and we were always quiet because he was a tyrant when we weren't. We were very quiet. And he walked in and he took the garbage can that he was walking towards and he kicked it across the room. Didn't go through the window, it almost did. But it startled all of us. And I went home that night and I said to my father, I wish I could just get out of his class. He makes me crazy. Why would you start a class that way? And blah, blah. My father said, well, did he seem any different than he was any other day? And I said, well, he was obviously upset, more upset. And he goes, what was he upset about? And I said, well, I don't know. Why would I know? My father said, well, let's make up some scenarios. Let's see what you would think if it was something different. He said, if we all had ticker tapes that went across our forehead that gave the people that were looking at us the background of what we just came from, it might change how we think about the situation, might change how we think about them. He said, what if, let's suppose just before he walked into that room, he got a phone call from his wife who was upset and said, I just got a call from the doctor. I have cancer. And he had to go to that class. Would you feel the same way? And I said, no, of course not. Of course not. He said, okay, I want you to think about that whenever you're faced with a situation that stresses you or distresses you because of someone's behavior. Take a step back and say, that's the approach I used working with behavioral problems in children. Okay. When I would deal with parents who were struggling because they might have had one or more kids that were really upending the family. And I would say, okay, let's take apart what's going on with the child. And there is a wonderful system and process we use to get at the root cause of behavior. Okay, what are the triggers? What triggers this kid? And then you can work to fix it. So you're working at connection with the kid, not correction at that point. Because if a kid is really distressed about something, he's not going to step back and say, oh, well, I shouldn't yell or raise my voice. They're just going to do it. It's a call out. We think nothing of a baby that cries all night and we find out they have colic, right? It's the same with kids. It's like, why are they seeking out the internet so much? Why are they sneaking out of the house at night? What is causing that? And what I found out, I went to a conference one time, a psychological conference, and there was one psychologist speaking, and he was doing a whole thing on basic behavioral intervention strategies. And he was talking to teachers. We were all teachers. And he said, look, he said, there's really two reasons, in my opinion, why kids misbehave or why they act inappropriately or why they go off the rails or whatever you want to call their behavior. There's really two reasons. He said kids who are insecure, don't feel safe, or don't feel they have any control over anything are going to act out. So these are the kids who, you know, parents are divorced and the parents are not on the same page and have not worked out who's going to be where. So they don't know if they're going to mommy's, they don't know if they're going to daddy's. I had a judge one time split custody by the day for a 6-year-old. After a month, he was out of his mind crazy in school because he never knew where am I going. And he knew if he went with dad, he might not get food. And if he went home to mom, he would eat. So he had no control over anything. So he said, so what you do with kids always is you give them choice. So they have some control over their lives because they don't feel like they have any anywhere. So you in the classroom, give them choices. And one of the things he said is, let me tell you a little trick, and it works beautifully. Give them two choices, one you want and one they don't. You end up with them doing what they need to do almost all of the time. So, same thing for teachers in the classroom. You've got a kid who cannot spell. And we know spelling is one of those things your brain either can spell or your brain can't spell. My husband has a doctorate, he's a chemist, he can't spell for anything. He's constantly asking me how to spell simple words. So it's one of those things. So if you have a kid like that, and you're doing a spelling bee and you're making everybody stand up in front of the room and spell the vocabulary words, that kid would rather act out and end up
It's
getting
money.
thrown out of the
Mhm.
classroom, right?
That's true.
So again, it's kind of pay attention,
Yeah.
give them choice. And a lot of my career in my consulting days between 2003, when I formally retired, and COVID, when I stopped consulting, um, in-person consulting, a lot of it was, okay, let's teach parents how to do this, how to give their kids choices. And teachers,
That is
you
so
need to
true.
provide 2 or 3 different ways for them to show you they know the answers.
Yep.
You know,
Rosemary, we only have about 6 more minutes left. So
oh,
this has been exciting. Yeah, I know there's so many interesting things because the things you're talking about are the things we all need to know. And like we talk about mothers and fathers, and I work with both parents, and the best parent is both parents in the process.
absolutely.
But sometimes even the best parents sometimes don't know what to do. And that's why programs like yours and mine reaching out to helping people
Right,
pick back up. Because there's some things that happen not so good at the mother's house. Sometimes things happen not so good at the father's house. So mother,
right,
father, man, woman, male, female. It's a process of us all knowing and learning
right,
before we're in that situation. Because I look back now at things I knew I should have done that I didn't do. And sometimes it was other things coming about that
right.
prevent me from doing them, but it was all me and things I should have known. So just quickly, as our last point, if listeners could take just one concept from your book, things you're talking about today, and they could share that with their own circle, starting that rippling effect, which principle do you think would be create the most meaningful impact? Just quickly.
I think the principle that it's not about money, it is about you. It is about your presence in your child's life as an observer, as a listener, and as a modeler of the behaviors and the securities you want your kids to grow up with, for sure.
That is That is so true. And that ability to be able to ask, and as you mentioned this, who, what, when, where, why, and how, when they say something, just ask who was involved, where did that happen, when did it happen, how did it happen, why did it happen? Because that why can be so important. And what I think you're saying, building that culture and that
Right,
knowledge going forward, right?
right. And the key here too is parents find that they don't have any time. These things don't take a lot of time. They're almost transcendental. You can listen, observe, and model on the way to taking your kids to school. You can do that on the way to cooking while you're cooking dinner. Go through your calendar and say, where do I buy time? And how do I
And
set up
sometimes,
routines?
so true. And sometimes, doesn't that, when we say we don't have time, isn't that that false evidence about reality called
Ab,
fear? We don't
abs,
want to put that time out there because we don't know what to do. So we think we have something else that we need to do. We're busy, we're not accomplishing anything. When
right?
that simple amount of time given to a child, a family member, somebody that's employed by you, even somebody you report to, giving them time and that listening, as you mentioned, can change the world, right?
Absolutely. It can change everything.
It
And they
can.
just need to understand that it doesn't need to be a lot of time. And I say to parents, if you are sitting in a line for a Starbucks coffee in the morning, that's 10, 15, 20 minutes you can give your kid. You need
It's,
to find the time because this is the priority. It's intentional parenting that we need.
and like you said, find the time. The time's right there.
Yep.
Make use of the time, right?
Right.
Here it
Right.
is. Ask
Yep.
those questions.
Small
Bring up those
moments.
ideas.
Yep. Small
Go ahead.
moments for big opportunities.
Small moments for big opportunities. Wow. Rosemary, thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your experience with us today.
You're
Your
welcome.
perspective, I appreciate it because your perspective reminds us that growth isn't all we need. It's just so much of what we can do and how we can do it in the processes and what we do each and every day. It's not about perfection, only intention. To be intentional in what we do with it, listening, be able to listen, care, and the willingness to show up for ourselves and others. I
Right.
am so grateful for that calmness, that clarity, and encouragement that you're bringing into this conversation as we talk about that. To our listeners, whether you're here online today, whether you're listening to this later, thank you for spending the time with us and for being part of a community that believes connection and unity truly matter. Rosemary has also made a thoughtful gift available to support you as you take your next step forward. We put that QR code on the screen earlier or contact her.
Mhm.
I'll give you her information. Well, it's pretty easy for either one of us. Just go out to www.rosemaryolender.com. Rosemary, Olender. Get out there, communicate with her. I encourage you to explore it, continue that journey, and build that confidence, that purpose in your own life. Because through that, we can be strengthening relationships. As she mentions, one moment at a time, personally and professionally. It's a mindset of value, not just an ideal. It's a mindset about that mindset of value, knowing all sides to these important concepts like living with purpose, not pressure, and like unity. Shows us that they are success focused strategies that are a daily choice for each of us to lead with empathy, act with integrity, and uplift others along the way. This is a service that we can share with others at no cost. Just like she mentioned, talking to your child or a friend in a drive-through line. Use it. Gain much more value from those times and those actions. So if anything, any kind of inspiration came from what Rosemary shared today, connect with her. Find her on LinkedIn. Go to her www.rosemaryolender.com site. Connect with her. If you have something with Achieving Unity, go to www.achievingunity.com, www.markentrican.com. Because as Rosemary has helped us create a unity between each other, within ourselves, by clarifying vision, aligning daily action, those small moments, and taking that first meaningful step toward a life where we can truly put our wallets away and raise rich kids. It's so, so beautiful. So, Rosemary, any last comments before we close?
No, just that I wish everybody well, and it is a journey, and you'll make mistakes. Own them, talk about them, let your kids know why it was you think it was a mistake. Just open communication will make the bonds and connections within the families tighter, and it will make your kids trust you and come to
So
you
much more.
when they have issues.
That is so true. I like the way you said that too, because if you communicate with them earlier, they will communicate with you later when
Hmm.
both of you need it the most.
Hmm.
So until next time, let us continue to transform that complexity that we think we see every day into execution, those actions. Transform that chaos into connection and our purposes into action. Let us continue achieving unity. www.achievingunity.com. Call us 303-362-8733, which is what on your keypad? 303 focused, which I hope you will always remember. We can stay focused on turning chaos into connection as we achieve unity by harnessing the power of encouraging, inspiring, and including others in building better businesses, better lives, and a better world. This is Mark Etrican with the Achieving Unity Leadership System, reminding you that life is truly what we make it. So let us help people feel seen, heard, and supported through those everyday moments, as Rosemary has talked about, that truly matter and make life awesome together in unity. Thank you all. Thank you, Rosemary. Rosemary Olender,
But
Olender. Go to her website. Rosemary, you would say something? I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say my pleasure. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for being here, for your message. You're helping others, showing up for one another. And again, those small moments that mean so much, that make a big difference. So put your wallet away, give that knowledge and that sharing that time, because through your time and your commitment, you make everyone think better, act better, feel better. Rosemary, thank you so much. Everyone, all the audience, I hope to see you all again next week. Till then, cheers.